She trained her whole life for a shot at the NCAA finals. Then in her senior year, her final chance, it was ripped away by a man competing in women's swimming. Today, we bring you an exclusive interview with Reka Gyorgy, the brave athlete who lost her dream to an unfair system and is now bravely leading the charge to stop that from happening to more females, more women here in Virginia. You'll hear her powerful story, plus our take on the viral clash between Olympic champion Simone Biles and Riley Gaines over, yes, you got it, a boy competing in high school girls softball. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Speak Up Virginia. Glad to have you back with us, Victoria.
Yeah, glad to be back.
Yeah, summer's always crazy for you, I know.
It is. It's a little bit of a juggle. So.
All right. Well, we have a great exclusive interview to share with you guys with a female athlete who really brings an important perspective of experiencing the personal harm that comes when we have these crazy policies allowing males to invade female sports and take away opportunities and even endanger women and just put them in horrible situations in the locker room. And so she is a very brave person. Her name's Reka Gyorgy, and she's going to share with us her personal experience that I really think needs to be heard and shared with as many people as possible. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about that this continues to be in the news headlines. And, after we had the whole famous exchange with Trump and Elon Musk, then we have something else playing out on X, which is another exchange, but it's specifically on this issue, female sports. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, well, for some reason, I guess Simone Biles decided to pick on Riley Gaines, which was such an interesting scenario. So essentially, again, what brought this issue to the forefront was a male competing in women's sports. And so Riley makes a comment, and Simone Biles, out of nowhere, I don't think I hadn't heard she's made a lot of comments about this kind of stuff before, but she comes in with a tweet that really was kind of a personal attack against Riley Gaines for standing up for, women in protected spaces and sports and the whole nine yards. And it was a shocker. It felt like it was out of the blue, to be honest.
It seemed bizarre because all of us, we had just so much. She was a hero.
She's an amazing athlete.
Yeah, Olympic champion, gymnastic Olympic champion. All of us remember how much we looked up to her and just how she just came onto the scene and a hero for a lot of little girls. So to come out and basically call Riley Gaines a bully, we're just going to put the original post up here, was really bizarre. My understanding is Riley had been talking about, I think it was high school girls softball.
Yeah, I think, right.
Involved a state championship.
Which I played softball through high school, and if I had to play guys, it would have been bad. So I just have such a heart for this. I don't understand why anybody thinks that that's fair. I watch the men's softball. My kid plays men's softball with our church now, and you just watch where they hit the ball. Yeah. I don't think there's a girl that can hit where I'm watching these high school guys and adults hit the ball.
So, of course, you're going to win the state championship if you have that kind of advantage. I'm sorry. So it seems like it was fair, obviously, for Riley to comment on. She should not be called a bully for that. But I guess Simone did walk back those comments, and Riley was gracious about the whole thing.
Well, yeah, because Simone actually made this comment about, Riley's, that her height was somehow like a male, which just was ridiculous. And Riley just graciously, I loved it, did a little video with her husband holding up a measuring tape, because she's like 5'5", I think it was, or something. She's not a particularly tall.
You're up there at that height.
Yeah, I'm beyond that height, so I don't know what that makes me, but I'd be a very short guy. So, okay, I guess
we
guys
won't go there.
But whatever. So the whole thing was just absurd. I am really glad Simone walked it back, and I think it tells you where culture is. She received such backlash, and as she should have, but a couple
Simone
of years
received backlash
for calling
equating her to a bully.
Yeah, and so I think, if that had happened a couple of years ago, I don't think she would have received half of that backlash. Yeah. And so I'm just really grateful that we've come back to our rational senses a little bit.
Yeah, and you still saw all these Hollywood celebrities jumping in, ganging up on Riley, but the public, they're not paying attention to that.
They're not interested at all. And honestly, the only person that had to lose was Simone Biles, because Riley became famous specifically because of this sport. So her entire fan base is built around her passion in this area. And so the idea that Simone would jump into this issue and pick on the person that's the star of this issue is like the dumbest PR move ever. So anyway, just besides having the wrong ideas about transgenderism, it also was just a tragic blunder. So anyway, it was
you mean because she started speaking out on swimming because she had to. We'll get into that in a minute. But let's. Well,
I mean, we wouldn't know Riley Gaines' name. We would never know her name
if she wasn't affected.
If she hadn't spoken out on this issue. And so it's just so bizarre that Simone thought this was a good idea. It's bizarre that she thinks men should be across spaces.
Yeah, even though the public is, this is an 80-20 issue, we still see this stuff happening. It's still in the news headlines. And we're just going to flash up a few of these headlines as we're talking. But you still see the women, we've got one image here of a woman that protested by kneeling in a fencing competition against a man. And it's just happening, just still in the running and all kinds of different areas. What do you think? Help me understand why you think this continues to resonate with the public. Why is this still kind of the top of the headlines?
Well, because and I'm really glad to see that. I mean, to me, this is so basic common sense. So this doesn't take deep eschatology or theology or anything to come to the idea of, I cannot imagine why people think that there's sort of, a right for a male to jump in and take a championship, a scholarship, all of that. And so I think it's so common sense, and people are finally like, okay, we can finally, we had a little era where it was like nobody could even speak common sense, and I think it's kind of a relief, like, okay, I haven't lost my mind. I don't have to pretend reality is something other than it is. And also, we have an obsession in our culture with sports. I mean, I hate to acknowledge that, that's just the reality.
True.
We are obsessed with sports. And so this issue touches a lot of other things, spaces and other things. But when it comes to sports, we kind of all, the whole culture kind of jumps up and sits up straight and goes, wait a second, we can't have this in sports.
Yeah. And in our culture of empowering women, sports is a big part of that.
Sports plays a huge role in the confidence and leadership abilities of our young girls. And I think that parents know that. They know that their girls are being shaped by that experience of being on a team, by that experience of stretching yourself and overcoming obstacles. Sports just has all the dynamics. I just love them so much, so it's hard for me.
Yeah, you're the perfect person to talk about this.
I'm a sportsaholic myself, and I have to watch my own balance on that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it just keeps surfacing, is because there's still a few places where people are ignoring what is so obvious and allowing this to happen. And so it outrages people.
Well, for whatever reason, our academic system, our schools and our sports leagues and everything, they still seem behind the public on this.
Because they're led by a bunch of leftist elites in some areas. And so they still think they know what's best, and we'll all just come along. But we're not going to.
Right. And this is where Reka comes in, because she's leading the charge here in Virginia. Will you bring us up to speed where that's at right now?
Yeah, this is such a great thing. So I think it's important maybe to give some
bit of history.
A little bit of background. You want to kind of fill us in on who she is? And
so Reka Gyorgy, young beautiful woman that went public on this issue after losing her spot to be able to compete. And keep in mind, it was her senior year. This was going to be her last big chance. Yeah, in college, to compete in a 500 freestyle NCAA championship. She lost her spot to a biological male.
One that we know, one that became famous because it was also one that affected Riley Gaines. Because that was maybe one, for some of us, that was the first story we heard about was Riley Gaines. And this Will Thomas, who then competed as Leah, I believe it was,
Leah.
stepped into these women's sports and not just disrupted Riley, but also Reka.
So you heard about Riley a lot because if you remember, Riley, he went on to, I think it was the 200 free. He went on in the championships, and he ended up winning that competition. And it was actually a tie with Riley,
right?
But he's holding the trophy. I think she had to hold a different substitute trophy or something. So we all remember that moment. But then what you didn't hear about as much was Reka. She was in the I think it was in the prelims,
right?
And literally, she got the 17th spot, and he was 16.
They take 16.
Yeah.
And so he got essentially her spot.
He went on to the finals.
And he got to keep going. And the unfairness, I think, I mean, you can literally physically look at them and know how unfair this is, in swimming. And so it's just for anybody, I think this just paints such a clear picture of why women should not have to compete against men. And I'm so proud of Reka for speaking up. So,
and I want to mention, this is not just any athlete we're talking about. Reka is just excellent in everything. She's in the upper echelon of this. So echelon, she is an Olympian. A lot of people don't know that about her. She competed in 2016 Olympics.
Yep.
And she's also, I think, more at the college level. I'm not as up on the whole sports world as you are.
Swimming isn't my most knowledgeable sport.
Well, I'm going to try and get these right. But on her resume, you'll see she's a 2-time Atlantic Coast Conference champion, ACC champion, and then All-American, 2-time All-American swimmer. So, I mean, she's got a whole resume full of amazing stuff here. So it's very significant. The point is, this man is not beating out just an average female swimmer.
Yeah.
He's beating out the top.
The top.
Yeah.
The top. Yeah. And so we're just so proud of Reka because not only like Riley is she speaking out, but she's in Virginia. She's really trying to make a difference and actually get the rules overturned, which I think is really significant. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, because she could have just wallowed in that defeat, and played the victim. But she's turned this around and saying, no, I'm going to stand up for other women.
So these girls, I mean, Reka and there's 2 other folks, and these are Roanoke College swimmers. So Lily Mullins and Carter Satterfield are asking the Board of Health, and I think Riley Gaines has been involved as well, and they're asking our Virginia Board of Health for a regulation, because that's what the Board of Health can do. They can regulate this out where males can no longer both invade the sports and the private spaces, those locker rooms, because that's part of these girls' stories too, is not just I had to swim against this male, but then he walks into my locker room, which is obviously a privacy space. So anyway, so they are petitioning for a change in regulations that would affect all of our sports.
And Reka has put her name on this petition, so very brave. I think a lot of girls would maybe choose to be selfish and just go on with her career because it's not easy, even though it's an 80-20 issue.
It wasn't when some of these folks started.
Not when she started. I think she had some death threats and things, so she's been very courageous, especially considering just starting out her career. So, Victoria, tell us where we're at. So I know we talked on this podcast before, and there's an action center we have on our website, Protect Our Girls, familyfoundation.org/Protect Our Girls if you want to come alongside them. But we've talked about how the first step was she petitioned, and then people across Virginia supported her through a public comment site.
Yeah, we have 2,300 comments, so it's not a small amount of folks that weighed in on this. And so it's really the stage that it sits at right now is that it's waiting that the Board of Health has to decide to take this up. And so that's kind of right where we are. They just had a public hearing, and so we're hoping soon that they would say we're going to, and all they would do, the first step is we're going to consider it, right? Okay. You don't immediately just we're going to do, and then they would have some kind of meeting to move that forward.
All right, so we're going to keep you posted on how you can continue to weigh in specifically to the Board of Health members, Virginia Board of Health, and support Reka and the others' efforts. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and get right to this awesome interview. I think you'll be encouraged and you'll want to share it with everybody. So without further ado, here is Reka Gyorgy. Well, welcome, Reka. It is such an honor to have you. Thank you for joining us on the Speak Up Virginia podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so cool that just the other day you took your personal time to go out to the Virginia Board of Health, and they were meeting kind of way out there. It wasn't, in an easy city to get to. So you took your time to do this, and you were there with our interns who were so excited to be with you. So thank you so much for just caring to invest like that and letting our Virginia Board of Health know why this is a huge issue.
Yeah, first, thank you so much, your support, because, if you wouldn't reach out to me a month ago or whenever it was, I wouldn't have be part of this petition and try to save women's sports and spaces in Virginia. So first of all, thank you for everything you do. And it's always an honor to speak up about what I believe in and fight for the truth. I had my own experience competing against a biological male and sharing the locker room with a male. So I'm really passionate about this topic, and I try my best to have a safe future for girls and women in sports and just public spaces.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, people like yourself and Riley are modern day heroes. And I know a lot of girls look up to you, and just all of us do. So thank you. And but at the same time, there is a cost to speaking up. And I know you've experienced that in some interesting ways. I know maybe when you first started speaking up, you're blocked from social media, and I know you've had some death threats and things like that. And I just want people to understand how much courage that takes, because you're young, you are starting out in your career, and yet you have decided to do this on behalf of other girls. Tell us, what is really driving that internal motivation, giving you that boldness to do this despite the costs?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's very scary to stand in front of the public and talk about something that really controversial. And, people disagree with you, people hate you for whatever you have to say. But also there are people who are supporting you. I remember at the beginning in 2022, 3 years ago, when I sent that public letter on social media to the NCAA, where I criticized them letting a male competing against women. I got the backlash. I was the first athlete who spoke up about having transgender athletes in women's sports. And many, many people disagreed with me. And I was the one who got all the hate. I was the one who got threatened, and my family got threatened by strangers, So it was very scary because I never knew how people will react when they are going to meet with me in person. And I have many experiences when I went out, even in Blacksburg, where I live at, and I went to the restaurant, and the server came up to us, and she's like, "Oh, you are the one who sent that letter out." And that was it, what she said.
Wow.
And I was like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So I think that's the scary part, that you never know how people will react. But at the same time, I always also told that I'm not going to get a job because of being public about this issue and speaking up about what I believe in, which is
People told you
wrong.
People told you you wouldn't get a job if you spoke out.
That's correct. So, and they were just wrong. I'm telling you this right now, that it was the bad thing that I could have done. Speak up about what I believe, and speak up about the fairness and the unsafety of having a male competing or changing in the same locker room as girls.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to that moment, and I just want to put a post up here for our audience to see, because I just love this post that you put on your X feed. And I'm going to read what it says here. It says, "If I can help girls and women to have safe spaces and fair opportunities in sports in the future, I'll share my experience as many times as I have to." And you've been true to that. But I want to kind of help people understand what that experience was for you that you've been sharing. And let's just take you back to that actual moment when there was a lot at stake in your senior year, and you realize in that moment that you're losing your spot to a biological male. Can you bring us back to that moment and what that was like for you emotionally?
Yes. So going into the championship season, the way I found out that I will have to compete against Leah Thomas, because he was the one who competed against us women in 2022 on social media. So it wasn't from the NCAA, it wasn't from the coaches or from the university. It was the social media, but I found out that he's going to compete at the women's championships. So first of all, that was a shock, because I expected the people around me to tell me what's going to happen and get prepared as much as you can. And it never happened. And then
this is who we now know as Leah Thomas. And this is a person that had been competing in the male competitions before, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first shock. And then we go to the NCAA championships, and it was the day before the championship started when I was about to open the locker room door, had my stuff in front of me. I was ready to change when I physically bumped into Thomas. And I felt his male genitalia pressing to my hand. And that's the time when I realized I will have to share the locker room as well with him. It's not just competing against him, but also sharing my private room with him, which is just wrong. Like, it's fully wrong. He shouldn't be there. He's a male. I'm a woman. And, like, maybe it sounds funny to some people, but we are talking about 18 years old, 19 years old, maybe 22 years old female athletes competing at that competition. And some of them didn't even see a naked man before. And people can laugh about it, but that's the truth. That's the truth.
And you hear about the competition part, the unfairness, but I think this is part of the untold story that people don't realize the reality of this, that this is the situation, non-consensual situation you're putting girls in, like you said, that haven't experienced this ever before. Help us understand how that is traumatic to young women.
It's very traumatic. I mean, there was no conversation. There was no consent that he's going to be in the locker room as well. We did not know. So being feared, looking over my shoulder the entire time, because I know he can enter the locker room any second and my privacy is going to be robbed from me. It's just like a really discomfort feeling. You are scared. And like, I don't know how many people know, but putting a competition suit on takes like 20, 25 minutes. It's a really long time to stand naked. And then you are having a male with you in the locker room and you have to do that where there's no space to hide. It's a really discomfort feeling and shocking, and you just feel like that somebody betrayed you.
Wow. Well, thank you for just being vulnerable and sharing what that was like for you, because there's just not enough girls yet that feel like they can speak out. And when you're experiencing all this, the pressure was the opposite way. You didn't feel like there was support around you by the people in power, to come alongside you and say, yeah, we understand how you're feeling. We're going to back you to protect yourself. I get the feeling there was none of that, at least at that time.
Exactly. You are fully right. And I think it's funny, or I don't think so it's funny, but at the same time, NCAA celebrated the 50th anniversary of Title IX at the 2022 Women's Championships. And for people who don't know what Title IX is, it's pretty much got created for women to have fairness and safety in sports, and being able to have scholarships and being eligible at athletics. So it was a huge deal 50 years ago. And when they let Thomas compete at the women's championships and letting him in the locker room where we had to change, Title IX was just not working as it was supposed to,
Yes, that is ironic. Yes. Well, that was just the beginning for you. Then tell us what happened when you're actually trying to have your last chance to compete in the finals your senior year.
Yeah, so I had to compete against Thomas in the 500 freestyle. It was the first day of the competition, and I swam my best morning time. I was just a little bit off from my personal best, and I was watching the last 2 or 3 heats from the pool deck, and Thomas was in the last heat. Right after the last heat finished, they put the results on the scoreboard so everybody could see who made it back to finals. And I saw the 17th place next to my name, which means that I didn't make it back to the top 16. And that was the moment when I actually realized what had happened. That was the moment when I realized that my place got robbed because the NCAA let a male compete against us. And I just broke down in tears, and my teammates tried to help me to go to the locker room and change and get back to the hotel. So I was really upset about what had happened.
Yeah, because it's just one spot that made the difference. And you could have become, I think you could have become angry, bitter, but instead you decided to turn this unfair experience into a positive thing to help other women. And I just think that's so powerful. And, just tell us a little bit of what you're trying to do to turn this around to make sure it doesn't keep happening to other women.
Yeah, so after this happened to me in the 500 freestyle and everything that happened with the locker room situation, it was actually my head coach who came up to me and said that, Reka, if you would like to say something or speak up, this is the time. So I had a couple of days to think about it because on the second day of the competition, I had my best event, the 400 IM. So I tried to push everything apart, what happened on the first day, and focus on my main event because at the end of the day, that's what I worked for. It was my last year in the Division 1 athletics. I wanted to give my best. And I made it back to the B final and I got 10th at the end.
Okay.
So after that, I had a little time to think about it, and I decided to write an open letter to the NCAA where I criticized them to letting a male compete against us and changing in the same locker room. And I also shared it on social media after I left Atlanta. And pretty much like since then, I have been working either in the background or giving interviews, helping students for research or school project who try to do a topic on transgender athletes in sports. So I always try my best to speak up about what I believe in and help other athletes who don't have the chance to speak up because they are either afraid to speak up or they were told not to speak up. So I'm trying to represent everybody who doesn't have a stand and speak the truth.
Well, let's talk about the NCAA real quick. What was their response to you and what's going on with that right now?
That's funny that you asked because it has been 3 years and I did not get a response from the NCAA.
Wow, I thought maybe they would have responded by now, but that's not the case.
Not at all. So I wrote the letter. My coaches helped me to print it out, and I handed it over to one of the NCAA representatives on the last day of finals back in 2022 at the NCAA championships. And since then, I did not hear a word from them.
And I read this letter. It was very reasonably and compassionately written. You weren't saying anything against other people. You're just trying to stand up for fairness and holding NCAA accountable. So then my understanding is you never heard from them. So you eventually ended up joining a lawsuit, right, against the NCAA to try to hold them accountable for these unfair situations that are created against women like you when you allow males to compete in female sports. And I wanted to ask you about this because I did see, when Trump came out with his executive orders banning, schools and other places from allowing males to invade female sports in these private areas, that the NCAA did say they were going to comply with that. Do you feel like that is a win? Are you satisfied with where they're at now?
I am not satisfied at all. I don't know if you have read their new rules. After Trump's CEO at the NCAA shared the new rules, how they are gonna check that who's gonna compete in what category. And if you read between the lines, the NCAA is still letting transgender athletes or males competing against women because they say that whoever, like, if it's woman on your birth certificate, that you are able to compete in the women's category. Now we know that you can change your birth certificate at the court. So at the same time, did they comply with Trump's CEO? Well, they not. They changed the rules, but they did not comply fully with the EU that was signed by Trump.
Okay, so you're saying that women could still experience these unfair and maybe even harmful situations.
That's correct. I mean, if you look around since the EU was signed, you can still see male competing in high school level, Division 1 level, and many different levels, and taking opportunities away from women from scholarships or places at the competition. So I think like it's the first step towards our goal to keep women's sports safe in the future, but we are not even nearby to the end of this story.
Mm. Yeah, so there's still much work to be done. But before we get into what's happening here in Virginia, I want our audience to be able to get to know you a little bit personally. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, I think one really interesting thing is that you are an actual Olympian. I did not realize that until I started preparing to talk to you. So what is it like to be in the Olympics? You know, you see it in the movies and everything, but what's it really like?
Yeah, so to start at the beginning, like I was 8 years old when I started swimming. And I just fell in love with the sport, so I stick with it for a long time. And results came after results, and I was able to achieve my child dream to make it to the Olympics. But it wasn't an easy way, just like life, sports is the same, that you have ups and downs. And it was the hardest not to give up when I was really on the bottom, and just keep pushing myself towards my goals. And I was lucky enough to have my coaches and my family, especially, in my back all the way on this road, and help me when I needed the most. But yeah, like being at the Olympic Games and just like looking around the Olympic Village or walking around the Olympic Village and seeing all the athletes from different sports, different countries, your idols are there, and it's just an unreal experience. Even like 10 years after, almost 10 years later, I still cannot believe that it happened. And I think like it's always, when I remember back to that memory, it's a little bit blurry because it was just a lot of impulse that I got while I was in Rio. But it's definitely the best experience I have ever had. And yeah, it's just the biggest achievement I can dream of.
Well, is there a lot of camaraderie there that's different, or is it the fierce cutthroat competition? What's that like?
Yeah, it's very different than other like smaller meets or international meet. Like before I went to the Olympic Games, I have been at Junior Europeans, Junior World Championships, European Championships, World Championships. But having 10,000 people cheering for, not just for you, but for everybody who's competing, usually I'm able to close out those noises and just focus on myself. But in Rio, I wasn't able to. It was just way too loud, what I was used to. But it was a dream. It was so magical.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that. And let's talk about what you've been doing here in Virginia. I'm looking at my notes here. I see you graduated from Virginia Tech with a dual degree, very impressive, in human development and psychology, and a minor in disability studies. And you're giving back to Virginia Tech. You're the director of operations for swimming and diving program. You just were explaining to me before we got on here that it's a busy season, planning for all the events and everything. So, and also I saw you've done some social work. So I'm just so thankful that you're here in this state, giving back to Virginia.
Yeah, so I had a full scholarship with Virginia Tech. That's why I moved to the US, the first place. So I was part of the swim and dive team at Virginia Tech between 2017 and 2022. Right after graduation, I was working as an ABA therapist. So pretty much it's a special therapy for kids with autism or some sort of disabilities. And I love that job. My grandmother was a social worker for 4 years. Wow. That's how I grew up. It wasn't something really far away from me, So I just love to help people and make their life better. So it was really great to work with the families who needed some help. And then I applied for my green card. And while I was waiting to get my green card, my old head coach called me and said that Reka, the director of operations position, will be open. And if you would like to come back, we would love to have you and help the team from the background. So pretty much that's how I ended up going back to my old team. And I would love to say this, that it's great to give back to the people who helped me to achieve all those results as an athlete. And I love to have the current athletes to achieve the best in and out from the pool.
Right. Well, getting back to your stance with the Virginia Board of Health, I was able to hear the testimony that you gave the other day directly to them. And one thing you said is that you don't want any other woman to have to go through this. So let's just talk about what's going on with that and how people can help stand by you in this effort. What are you trying to accomplish here in Virginia? What are you asking the Virginia Board of Health to do? First of all, what's the most important thing you're asking them to do?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm living in Virginia. I have been living here in the past 8 years, and it's really important for me to help those girls and women who don't have the chance to speak up, as we talked about it earlier. I would like to represent them and save their sports and spaces in Virginia. Like I'm planning to have children in the near future. And if I would have a daughter, I would like to have a future for her, what I was able to have when I was an athlete, or the way I lived my life until now. Because I feel like that this issue is coming bigger and bigger, and we have to end it now before it escalates better. So I would like to tell people who are living in Virginia and would like to help to either reach out to me and I will be able to help you out, or if you reach out to the Virginia Health Board and just tell them that you are supporting this petition and please save girls and women's sports and spaces in Virginia, that would definitely help to move this case forward and have a brighter future in Virginia.
Yeah, and this issue, as you pointed out, is not going away. And, earlier Victoria and I had talked about this very public ex feud with Simone Biles. It was started pretty much it started in a kind of a crazy way with Simone Biles basically calling Riley Gaines a bully for doing what she always does, taking a stance against males taking away opportunities from females in sport. I think this time it was a high school softball girls competition.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. And, it's good that Simone walked away from that or backed that down and apologized. And Riley was gracious about the whole thing. But then you had this columnist, I don't know if you saw this for USA Today, that just really made an astounding statement. And I want to read it because I just really think it's jaw dropping and let you react to this. So this USA Today sports columnist says, quote, "There is no scientific evidence that transgender women athletes have a physical advantage over cisgender women athletes." So when you get through all of the politically correct language that she's using, essentially she's saying that biological men do not have an advantage over biological females in sports competition. What's your response?
I think it's just mind-blowing. Like, I don't know if these people failed fourth grade biology, but it's basic biology. No matter what you do, a male is going to be stronger than a woman, and you cannot change the DNA. Women have XX chromosomes, men have XY, and that's it. The conversation is over. And I just don't know what these people think when they say something like this, and I don't know if they have never played sport or they just have never seen a male body, but just by look, you can tell who's the stronger. And you can take drugs, you can do gym, you can work out to try to get bigger than them. But this is not how it works. Biology is always going to be on their side, and they are going to win over a woman, no matter what.
Absolutely. I don't know if there's just so much ideology brainwashing that they cannot see the truth right in front of them. That it's hard to explain. But I'm glad we have people out there like you speaking truth. So with that said, what's your last takeaway here? What do you want people to know about why this is a battle worth fighting?
I would just like to say that this is not about exclusion. It's about fairness, safety, and dignity. We don't say anybody to stop playing sports. We just want to have the safetyness and the fairness for all the women and girls in Virginia and all around the country, all around the world. And I hope that the more we speak about it and the more we share or the more we repeat our experiences, the people will open their eyes and actually see why it's worth it and help us to achieve our goals.
All right. Now, if people want to follow you, how do they do that?
You can find me on Instagram under my name or in Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter. So they can reach out to me on either platforms out of the three. I'm more than welcome to answer their messages or requests.
Okay. And again, if you want to stand by Reka and these other females trying to put in permanent protections for female sports and girls' privacy in Virginia, go to our Action Center, familyfoundation.org/protectourgirls. That's familyfoundation.org/protectourgirls. Well, thank you so much, Reka. I just think it's so important for people to hear your personal perspective. You are the perfect case in point on how this is not hypothetical. There is real harm to our women, and you're taking a stance, and we're going to stand behind you. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be on here, and it's an honor to represent all the women and girls who don't have a chance to do the same what I do.
All right. We'll be praying for you and these efforts.
Thank you.
Wow, her story is so powerful. And just considering all that she went through, I'm glad she's willing to be one of those that steps out and speaks up for other girls. And I don't think there's that many. I mean, I know we've got Riley and Reka, but there's still,
Considering how many have been affected by this,
Yeah.
there aren't a lot that are willing to really make an issue of it and put themselves forward. And so I think that really is significant for her.
Yeah, because we heard Bethany Hamilton share how there's a cost to that. A lot of
yeah,
times,
that's right. I forgot.
Yeah.
At the gala,
Yeah.
we had that. We brought her in, and she absolutely said, "Look, I lost." I mean, I don't know if she directly said it, but basically she lost her sponsorships as a
Yeah.
result of this, and so that was actual real income, not even just a championship. But some of these girls, it's scholarships. I mean, no question, the stuff that's going on in high school in particular is costing young girls opportunities that have deep connections to their academic future and all sorts of other things. So I'm super grateful, and I'm super grateful she was willing to. She was willing to go to our Board of Health meeting.
Yeah, that
and
happened.
testified. So we had a Board of Health meeting on the. She made this petition, but then she followed it up with actually being there in person, and we were thrilled. We got to have our interns got to go. We have some college athletes as interns, which I think is really cool. So one is a division, was a Division I track and field athlete, and so our intern went down to amplify what Reka was saying. So I think that's pretty cool.
So here's a picture that we're going to show of Reka with the interns when they spoke. And this is commitment because they drove all the way
to Whitville,
out.
which is not around the corner from Richmond if you're...
All right. The good news is there's still ways that you can stand behind these young people in speaking up for female sports and female privacy. And the Board of Health, as Victoria explained earlier, the ball is in their court now. And we've got this action center. It's familyfoundation.org/protectourgirls. You can also get there if you go to our website. There's a banner. You'll see the banner that you can click on. But there's two ways to help out. One, you can email all of the Virginia Board of Health members. And so if you go to this action center, we've made it really easy. We've got sample comments that you can use to kind of put your comment together. And then we've got their emails right there. So it's just a quick 1-2-step process. There's other things you can share, videos and things to help get the word out. And then also we have a link that you can click on to find out when the Virginia Board of Health is meeting, because they won't always meet out in the boondocks.
Yes, a lot of their meetings are in Richmond.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen to be that one.
And probably the next meeting will be, and we'll probably be putting a call to action out to come and support Reka again. Hopefully she'll be able to speak again, and you can come out and sit behind and support and show physical support for her, visual support. So yeah, with that said, do you have any other parting comments here on the issue and why it's important?
Well, I'm just really pleased with this process because our legislature isn't where it needs to be to pass a law.
Yeah.
So having the Board of Health get to where they need to around these health standards would be fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to keep up the battle. We know you're standing behind us. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together. Remember to share our Speak Up Virginia playlists. If you're listening on audio like Apple or Spotify, you can give us that 5-star review to help get the word out to more people. We'll see you next time.